Breaking news, the Associated Press reporting just moments ago that the UK Parliament has approved a bill authorizing the government to trigger its European Union exit process by March 31st. That's Article 50. They can get out. We're going to have more details for you. But right now, I'm joined by Brian Brenberg and Nile Gardiner. Nile, I got to start with you. There was some concern after moves made by I think it was the House of Commons, that maybe this Brexit was hitting some more speed bumps. It looks like it's full steam ahead now, isn't it?
It certainly is full steam ahead for Brexit, Charles. And the House of Lords, the upper house, basically passed a couple of amendments, actually, to the bill calling for the beginning of the process of withdrawing from the European Union. But the House of Commons emphatically rejected those amendments by the House of Lords. So we are on track to see the triggering of Article 50, beginning the process of Britain's exit from the EU by the end of March. So I think that this is a very good day, certainly, for sovereignty and freedom in Britain. And certainly Britain is on the right path now towards once again becoming a truly free nation.
Now, what are the economic ramifications that the EU has promised? I mean, they have promised and threatened some retaliation.
Well, certainly the EU has been threatening all kinds of retaliation against Great Britain, but it's not in the interests of the EU to retaliate against the British people. After all, Britain is an economic powerhouse. It is the world's fifth largest economy. It's going to overtake Germany as Europe's largest economy by around 2030, according to some projections. And any effort to retaliate against Britain is only going to harm businesses across the European Union. So I do think you're going to see a certain element of pragmatism entering into these negotiations, and many European countries adopting a far more pragmatic tone over the course of the next 2 years. It's in Europe's interest, I think, for Brexit to succeed. It's in Britain's interest, I think, to have a strong, robust relationship with the rest of Europe as well.
Professor, going into the Brexit vote, most economists said this thing would be devastating for the UK. You know, we saw some fluctuation with the currency, which may be drifting a little bit, but the stock market has done well. And so far, the economic Armageddon promise hasn't happened.
No, I mean, look, the UK has a fundamentally strong economy, and they want to get out of the EU because they look at the EU and they say, this is holding us back. So it makes sense for the UK to do this. Now, as Niall said, they have to manage their trade relationship. They want to trade with the EU, but at the end of the day, the UK benefits from this, and the EU should take a page out of the UK's book and say, look, their economy is strong. We've got economies in our system that are weak. What can we do to mimic what the UK is doing? We need a strong relationship at the end of the day, but the UK is saying we don't want to be bogged down anymore.
They're saying that, but the EU, particularly Germany at the center, has to make sure that there's not a mad dash for the exits. They like this EU system. It's served them pretty well so far.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be bad for Germany if there's a mad dash to the exit, but the reform has to happen within these countries. And again, Germany needs to be pushing its neighbors like France, like Italy, to reform their labor markets, to reform their taxes and their regulatory systems. That's what's causing the problems in these countries. It's actually not the trade relationships with China. It's their own economic problems created by their own legislation that's hampering workers, hampering entrepreneurship.
And of course, now with the EU, there's no such thing as sovereignty anymore. We talk about the immigration aspect of all this. There's this big wave of populism, but this really, a lot of it began as Euroscepticism. And we've got an election in the Netherlands where it looks like the Populist Party will win the majority of seats. I'm not sure if they'll be able to govern. You've got the election in France. This Euroscepticism, this idea of one central currency being rejected, I guess almost like the idea of one world government being rejected. Do you like this?
I think, you know, the winds of change are sweeping across Europe without a doubt. And Brexit is just the beginning, I think, of a rejection across many parts of Europe of supranationalism, a rejection of the European project. Certainly, Euroscepticism takes many different forms across Europe. But in Britain, you have seen, I think, tremendous momentum that is going to fundamentally change the trajectory of Europe. And that's a good thing, because if we have the decentralization of political power, greater economic freedom in Europe, also the ability to control borders in Europe, fundamentally important. And Brexit was, you know, all about Britain retaking control of its own future. And that applies to Britain. It's going to apply, I think, all over Europe. And you are going to see tremendous change across the European continent in the next few years.